Let's tell the truth for a moment. Not the polite version, not the version you tell yourself late at night when you're scrolling through other people's lives, the actual truth. You are single. And somewhere between the outside voice that says you're fine with it and the inside voice that keeps waking you up at 3 a.m., there is a gap. In that gap lives something you haven't been willing to look at this directly, not because you're broken, but because nobody ever gave you the honest version of this conversation. Everyone has an opinion about your singlehood. Your mother has an opinion. Your coupled friends have an opinion, delivered gently, with a slight tilt of the head. Society has an opinion, threaded through every movie, song, every algorithm that serves you a love story the moment you've had a hard day. And somewhere between all of those opinions, you absorb something that has been quietly running your emotional life for years. The belief that being single is a problem, not a season, not a valid state of being, not a chapter, a problem.
And here is the hard truth nobody is talking about loudly enough. The reason being single feels unbearable has almost nothing to do with being single. It has everything to do with what being single has come to mean to you. To some of you, being single means being unchosen. And being unchosen, somewhere deep in the architecture of your self-worth, means being insufficient. It means the evidence is still out on whether you are lovable, whether you are the kind of person someone would choose to build a life with. And that, not the missing companionship, is the thing nobody names out loud. You've attached your sense of value as a person to whether someone has decided to stay. And until you look at that clearly, no relationship will fix it. Not really. Not for long.
The hidden belief. Here is the equation running underneath everything. To be in a relationship means I am chosen. To be chosen means I am valuable. To be single means I have not yet been chosen. To not yet be chosen means something might be wrong with me. That is the belief, not the thought you'd say at dinner, not the thing you'd easily admit to, but the one that surfaces when you see a couple walking in the park and feel that particular quiet pain. The one that gets louder when another friend announces an engagement. The one that turns a perfectly good Friday evening into an exercise in wondering what exactly is wrong with you that other people can see and you can't. And here's what's devastating about that belief. It doesn't just affect how you feel about being single. It affects everything. It affects who you're attracted to, because somewhere underneath it, you've decided that someone hard to get would be better proof of your worth. If someone easy to love chose you, maybe that doesn't count. But if someone difficult, someone who keeps you guessing, if that person chose you, now you'd have evidence. It affects how you show up when you're dating, because you're not really looking for a partner, you're looking for a verdict. You're looking for someone to finally confirm that you are, in fact, lovable.
It affects how you feel on ordinary days, because if your worth is tied to being chosen, then the ordinary Tuesday when nobody is choosing you feels like a quiet indictment. You are not just missing companionship, you are using companionship as a measurement, and that is the conversation nobody is having. Where this pattern began. You weren't born believing your value depended on being partnered. Nobody is. A child runs through the grass, takes up space, demands affection without apology. A child exists without needing to justify the existence. So somewhere between that child and you, something shifted.
Maybe it was the family structure you grew up in, where couplehood was the visible unit of adult life, where the relatives at gatherings asked not what you were building or becoming, but who you were seeing, and you made a note of it. Children always do. Maybe it was school, the early, powerful social architecture of who likes whom, who is chosen, who is left standing when the pairs form. Maybe rejection arrived early and felt, in a way that was much too large for the moment, that it meant something fundamental about you. Maybe it was simply the messaging, years and years of it, every story you absorbed, every screen you stared at, every song that played in the background of your adolescence. They were all organizing themselves around the same central truth. The highest human experience is to be loved romantically. The story worth telling ends with two people choosing each other.
Everything before that is just the part before the real story starts. You didn't choose to believe that. You were just a person in a world that said it loudly enough and long enough that it became the water you swam in. And so you adapted. You began, slowly, to evaluate yourself through the lens of romantic desirability. You learned to perform a version of yourself that might be more lovable, funnier, more easygoing, less complicated, more whatever the current situation seemed to be calling for. You learned to audition, and the audition has been running ever since. Even when there's no casting director in the room, even when you're alone, you are still in some quiet part of yourself adjusting the performance. That is exhausting.
The adult pattern. Here's how it plays out in your life right now. You go on dates and come home not asking whether you liked them. You come home asking whether they liked you. The verdict you're waiting for is not about compatibility, it's about you. Were you enough? Were you interesting enough? Attractive enough? Relaxed enough? And when they don't text back, it doesn't just feel like disappointment. It feels like a small confirmation of the thing you are already afraid of. You find yourself drawn to people who are slightly out of reach, not because unreachable people are objectively better, but because the pursuit feels more meaningful. The logic, buried under the feeling, goes, if someone easy to impress likes me, it doesn't count. But if this person, the selective one, the one who keeps their warmth at a distance, if they chose me, that would mean something. So you work harder for the people who give you the least, and you feel oddly flat about the ones who make it easy, because easy doesn't feel like it proves anything. You have stayed in relationships that weren't right, not because you didn't know they weren't right, you knew. But leaving meant being single again, and being single meant returning to the open question of whether someone else would come along. And that question felt more threatening than the wrong relationship. You talk about wanting love, and you do, but the wanting has two layers. The first is genuine, warmth, companionship, someone to share the small and large things with, real and beautiful. But the second layer is running the show. The second layer wants to stop feeling like someone who hasn't been chosen, wants to close the question, wants to finally stop auditioning. And no relationship, not one, not the most loving, most perfectly matched relationship, can close that question for you, because the question isn't really about them. The illusion. Here's the illusion you are living inside. You believe that when the right person comes, you will finally feel okay. You believe that being chosen will quiet the voice, the one that measures and compares, and turns ordinary Tuesdays into evidence of something wrong. But here's what actually happens. The person arrives, and for a while it's beautiful. The question gets quiet. Someone chose to be here. The ache has a name now, and that feels like relief. And then, the anxiety doesn't disappear. It relocates. Now the question is, will they stay? Because if your worth is tied to being chosen, the choosing has to keep happening, every day. Every text that takes a little long, every night they seem distracted. The evidence has to keep coming, and when it doesn't, the old fear resurfaces in a new costume. Same wound, new story. The relationship didn't fix the belief, it just gave the belief a new place to operate. You have probably already experienced this. You have probably been in a relationship and still felt that particular loneliness, still felt the measuring, still felt on certain nights that something was missing, even though you technically had what you were supposed to have. That was not a relationship problem. That was the wound traveling with you. Being single did not create the wound. Being single just makes it more visible. And that visibility, as uncomfortable as it is the most useful thing about this season, because you can see it now. The core wound. Let's go all the way down. Underneath the loneliness, underneath the wanting, underneath the comparisons and the scrolling, there is something very simple and very old. The fear that you are not enough on your own. Not enough interesting, not enough lovable, not enough worth staying for. The fear that if someone really fully knew you, not the curated version, not the performing version, if they saw the ordinary, complicated, fully human version of you, they would leave. And here's what that fear has been doing to you. It has been making you perform constantly, even when the audience is yourself. You perform energy you don't always have. You perform security you don't always feel. You perform the version of yourself calculated to be most likely loved. And at the end of every day, you're left with the original question. Is the real version of me, without the performance, enough? That question is the core wound. Not the absence of a partner, the fear that the absence is proof of the answer. You are not afraid of being alone. You are afraid that being alone means something, that it is information, that the world has already weighed in on your worth, and the absence of a partner is its verdict. And that fear cannot be answered by a relationship, not permanently, because the relationship doesn't change the belief that generated the fear. It just gives the fear a new location to operate from.
Let's be direct. A relationship cannot give you the feeling of being fundamentally okay with yourself, because that feeling does not live in another person. It cannot be transferred. It cannot be unlocked by being desired or chosen or committed to. You know people who are in relationships and deeply unhappy, not necessarily with their partner, but with the ongoing experience of themselves. They brought the wound into the relationship and the relationship held it. The wound is just better dressed now. And you know people who are single and genuinely, solidly okay, not performing okayness, just actually inhabiting their lives without the ache of incompleteness. The difference is not their relationship status, it is their relationship with themselves. Here is the uncomfortable, liberating truth. The thing you are looking for from a partner, the feeling of being seen, valued, enough, home, is available to you right now. Not through an affirmation, but through the slow, consistent, unglamorous work of becoming someone who is genuinely in their own corner. The love you're looking for outside yourself is pointing you back inside. And the fact that you're single right now, which you may have been framing as the universe withholding something, might be the universe doing you the favor of making that visible before you spend another decade outsourcing your worth to another person's attention.
Before we move forward, let's stay here for a moment. If you have spent years measuring your worth through romantic validation, shifting out of that is not just a change in perspective, it is a loss. The loss of the story where a person is coming who will make everything make sense. The story where the longing has a resolution just around the corner. Where the ache is not a wound to address, but a waiting room to sit in until the door opens. That story, however painful, is also a comfort. The pain has purpose. You're suffering on the way to something. Letting go of it is a real grief. The grief of years spent auditioning. The grief of relationships you stayed in too long because leaving felt like failure. The grief of the version of yourself that kept shrinking to be more palatable. The grief of energy poured into hoping and chasing and analyzing why someone didn't text back. That was real time, real parts of yourself. It deserves to be acknowledged, not with drama or self-blame, with compassion for the person doing the best they could with the beliefs they'd been handed. You were not foolish. You were working with the operating system you were given, and now you're getting to update it. Unlearning the pattern. Unlearning this doesn't happen by deciding to love yourself. It starts with something smaller, catching the measuring. The moment after a date when you're not asking whether you liked them, but whether they liked you, catch that. Not to punish yourself, just to see it. Oh, there it is, the habit, the old equation. I'm looking for a verdict again. That noticing creates a tiny gap between you and the automatic running of the pattern, and in that gap, a different question can grow. Not, was I enough for them, but were they interesting to me? Does who they are feel good to be around? You start asking questions about your own experience instead of only their assessment of you. This is not selfishness. This is the beginning of being an actual participant in your life instead of an auditioner. You stop confusing loneliness with incompleteness. They are not the same. Loneliness is wanting more connection than you currently have. Real, human, deserving a response. Not necessarily a romantic partner, but warmth, presence, meaning, your friends, your community, the relationships that don't carry the cultural fanfare of romance, but that are, in the lived reality of Tuesday evenings and Sunday mornings, often far more sustaining. Loneliness says, I want more warmth. Incompleteness says, I am missing a piece of myself. One you can respond to right now. The other is a false story about your wholeness. You stop making your future contingent on someone showing up. You stop dreaming your life as something that begins when the person arrives. You begin dreaming your actual life, with the people already in it, the projects already calling to you, as if this is it, as if this is the real thing, because it is. Not because you've given up, because you've arrived.
For a long time, you have been someone waiting to be chosen. That identity has been organizing more than you realize. How you walk into rooms, how you evaluate the quality of your days, how you explain yourself to yourself in the quiet moments. I am someone who has not yet been chosen. And that framing has put all the power in the hands of an imaginary future person who hasn't arrived, someone whose preferences and timing and readiness you have no control over. And yet their hypothetical choosing has been the axis around which your sense of okayness has revolved. The shift is this. You stop being someone waiting to be chosen. You become someone who is choosing. Choosing your community, choosing your standards, choosing the quality of attention you bring to your friendships, choosing the life that feels like yours rather than a waiting room version of a life. Old identity, someone who needs to be chosen to feel whole. New identity, someone who is already whole and is looking for a genuinely compatible addition to a life that is already real. And when it comes to romance, the shift is enormous but quiet. You stop asking, what do I need to be to get someone to want me? You start asking, who is the kind of person I would genuinely want to build something with? Those are completely different orientations. The first puts you in constant adaptation, becoming whatever will work. The second requires you to actually know yourself, your values, your needs, your non-negotiables. People feel both of those things when they meet you. They feel whether you are there to know them or there to be confirmed by them. They feel whether you are someone with a life or someone waiting for a life to begin. And that orientation, that grounded, this is genuinely already my life energy, is not a performance of confidence. It is what actually becoming yourself feels like.
The quiet healing phase. Real healing from this looks nothing like the movies. It doesn't look like a montage of solo travel and morning runs and newfound radiance. It looks like waking up on a Saturday and your first thought not being about how long it's been since someone loved you. It looks like being out with friends and being fully in the conversation instead of scanning the room. It looks like noticing the ache when it comes, because it will come, and relating to it differently. Not as a signal that something is wrong with you, just as a human feeling that comes and goes, like hunger, like tiredness. Present, but not permanent. Real, but not defining. It looks like your friendships getting deeper, because when you stop funneling your emotional energy toward the hope of romantic partnership, you have more of yourself to give to the relationships actually in front of you. And those relationships, when they deepen, reveal something you may not have fully known, that the meaningful connection you've been associating so specifically with romance is available here too. It looks like building things, not to impress a future partner, just because you are someone with curiosity and energy and things you want to make. Building because you are here and participating in your own life. It looks like your standards in dating shifting from performed nonchalance to actual grounded clarity. Not desperate, not guarded, just real and honest, and no longer using another person's interest as the primary measure of your worth. The days are just days. Some are lonely, some are full, some are ordinary in ways that used to feel like punishment, but now feel like life. And in that ordinariness, which you spent years trying to escape through the hope of romance, there is a quiet sufficiency that surprises you the first time you notice it. You don't need filling. You were never hollow. You just believed for a long time that you were.
Here's the hard truth about being single that nobody talks about loudly enough. Being single is not the problem. The belief that being single is proof of something is the problem. And the real work, the work that will actually change the quality of your life regardless of your relationship status, is not about finding the right person. It is about finding a more honest relationship with yourself. Not a perfect one, not an enlightened one, just a more honest one. One where you are in your own corner. One where your worth is not up for debate based on who is currently choosing you.
One where the ordinary moments of your life are allowed to be enough. One where loneliness, when it comes, is a feeling to move through, not evidence to build a case against yourself with. You are not behind. The absence of a partner is not a verdict on your lovability. Build the life. Be in the life. Love the people who are already in it. Take up your full space. Stop auditioning. Not because someone is watching, because this is your life, and you are here, and it is happening right now. And you are enough for it. You always were. You just needed someone to stop dressing it up and tell you the truth.